I've watched many kind souls silence their rage, not out of peace, but fear, especially the empaths, those who carry compassion like armor, but bury their fury like a sin. But let me warn you, when you refuse to feel anger, you are not becoming whole, you are splitting. Your psyche cannot heal what it's not allowed to express, and if you do not face the fire within, it will burn silently from the inside out. There is a peculiar phenomenon I have observed in those who identify as empaths, a phenomenon cloaked not in the usual shadows of pain or projection, but in the subtle absence of something altogether human, anger. You who feel everything, who tremble at the suffering of another, who recoil from conflict, who offer silence in the face of injustice, not out of weakness, but out of a misguided virtue, must listen closely. For what you believe is compassion may, in fact, be a dissociation, a splitting of the psyche, a quiet fragmentation that the conscious mind cannot hear, but the unconscious registers as a scream. Anger, my friend, is not a sin. It is a signal, and to deny it, especially if it arises authentically from a wound or a violation, is to deny the self its sword. In the myths of old, the warrior who refused the blade was not praised for peace, but martyred for death, for he could not protect the inner kingdom. So too is your psyche imperiled when you exile this sacred emotion to the farthest recesses of your unconscious. It does not vanish. It festers. It grows teeth in the dark, and eventually it slips out in disguise, perhaps as chronic fatigue, as pranit, as inexplicable guilt, or as a sudden and violent projection onto someone who never earned your wrath. I have spoken often of the shadow, that repository of all you reject, all you deny, all you cannot bear to own. The empath, who never gets angry, is a master of repression. But repression is not integration, it is dismemberment. You cut away your fire to stay safe, and in doing so, you become cold. You silence your rage to stay kind. And in doing so, you lose the voice that would say, no, this is not okay. In the language of the alchemists, anger is sulfur, the volatile element that must be transmuted, not discarded. Its raw form is dangerous, yes, but in its purified essence, it becomes willpower, ponderis, life force. It is the dragon you must face to uncover the gold. But you, dear empath, have been taught that dragons are evil. That to speak your truth is to harm, that to roar is to betray the very light you wish to carry. And so you whisper instead of howl, you bend instead of stand, you absorb what is not yours in a desperate attempt to preserve harmony. But harmony built on self-erasure is not harmony, it is codependency. It is martyrdom masquerading as maturity. It is a beautiful lie told to a psyche desperate for love. Let me tell you the story of a dream recounted by a patient whose life was filled with compassion, yet riddled with quiet suffering. In the dream, she stood in a cathedral made of glass. Light poured in from all sides. She wore white, she sang to others, and her voice was balm. But behind her, a door throbbed with red heat. She refused to open it. She said it would ruin the purity of her cathedral. But The dream changed. The glass began to crack. Light turned blinding. Air voice faltered. And finally, the door burst open. A beast emerged snarling, wounded, weeping. It was her rage, her inner self. And when she embraced it, the cathedral did not shatter. It transformed. The glass turned to crystal. The light softened. And her voice became whole. This, my dear ones, is what you must understand. Anger denial does not keep you poor. It keeps you divided. It splits your psyche into the part you show and the part you suppress. And what is repressed does not rest. It waits. It waits until you are tired enough, soft enough, broken enough that it can crawl to the surface. And when it does, you will not recognize it. You will think it is someone else's fault. You will project it onto your lover, your child, your God, and then you will feel guilt, and the cycle will repeat. The empath who never gets angry is not enlightened. They are amputated. They have traded a part of their self for the illusion of peace. But peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of wholeness. You cannot be whole without your fire. You cannot set boundaries without your roar. You cannot stand in truth while denying the part of you that feels violated. So I ask you now, where in your life have you been silent when you needed to speak? Where have you smiled to keep others comfortable while your own soul twisted in protest? Where have you said yes when every cell in your body screamed no? Do not be ashamed of these moments. They are the keys to your integration. Each time you dened your anger, you created a crack in your psyche. And now, if you are courageous, you may begin the sacred work of repair, not by lashing out, not by swinging the pendulum toward violence or vengeance, but by entering the dream, by opening the red-hot door in your own cathedral, by facing the beast, not to kill it, but to embrace it, to ask it what it needs, to let it tell you what you were too afraid to hear. This is the work of the mystic psychologist. Not to repress, not to moralize, but to integrate, to weave the dark with the light, to remember that your psyche is not a temple of perfection, it is a forest, wild and alive, filled with creatures both tender and terrible. You must enter that forest now. You who feel everything, have you felt your own pain? You who forgive endlessly, have you forgiven yourself for being angry? You who comfort others, have you comforted the part of you that was never allowed to cry out? Let me be clear, anger does not mean harm. To feel rage is not to become abusive. That fear is the residue of your own trauma. You were perhaps punished for feeling, or ignored, or told to be good. And so now, goodness means self-sacrifice. But I tell you, this true goodness is authenticity. And authenticity requires shadow work, requires truth, requires anger, when anger is called for in the deep chambers of the unconscious. Anger appears in many forms, as wolves in dreams, as red rivers, as broken teeth, as storms just beyond the horizon. Do not fear these symbols. They are invitations. The psyche is mythic. It speaks in images, and it demands attention. What you do not bring to consciousness will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So many empaths live at the mercy of this unconscious fate. They find themselves in relationships with narcissists. They are used, drained, discarded, and still they say, I must have done something wrong. I should have given more. No, you gave too much and you did not protect the sanctity of your own soul. Empathy without boundaries is self-destruction. Empathy without anger is spiritual bypassing. Empathy without shadow is false light. The time has come to stop calling your suppression a virtue. You are not kind because you never get angry. You are kind because you choose to love even when anger rises. And sometimes love itself is fierce. Love draws lines. Love défend. Love says no. So when your voice trembles, do not silence it. When your chest tightens, do not override it. When the fire rises, do not drown it. Let it warm you. Let it guide you. Let it tell you what matters. Your psyche has waited long enough. It is time to bring the dragon home. When you finally turn toward the dragon within the roaring, shamed, shackled part of your being, you will not be consumed. You will be illumined, for the dragon is not your enemy. It is your power, distorted by years of suppression, waiting to be remembered. Yes, I say remembered, for you have been dismembered by moralism, by culture, by familial patterns that feared the fire, and so taught you to fear it too. But what is remembered becomes holy again, and what is holy can be trusted. I once said that every psychic content strives for wholeness. The parts you push away do not leave you. They orbit your consciousness like forgotten moons, casting shadows in every direction. Anger is often the closest moon to your inner sun. It moves tides. It awakens instinct. It is your first response to injustice. To numb it is to betray the natural order. And here lies the spiritual paradox in your refusal to feel anger. You invite chaos. The psyche that cannot protest, that cannot defend its borders, becomes a victim of every external will. You become pliable, but not in the way of water. You become eroded, like a shoreline, pounded by waves without a cliff to hold them back. You become spiritualized into irrelevance. Your light loses gravity. This is not sainthood. This is surrender of self. What then must be done? You must reclaim the archetype of the sacred warrior, not the warmonger, not the tyrant, but the one who knows when to draw the line. In myth, the warrior is not merely a killer, he is a boundary keeper, a protector of the sacred, a channel of life force that says, here I stand, you shall not pass. This, dear empath, is the stance you have forgotten, and it is time to remember. You must feel anger in your body again, not to act it out blindly, but to let it speak, to listen as it rises in your chest, at a time, saying, I exist, I matter, I have been violated. And when you listen, something miraculous occurs. The anger softens. It doesn't disappear, but it becomes less monstrous, less foreign. It becomes a companion, even a guide. In dreams, I have seen this transformation. A patient once told me of a lion who stalked her for years in her nightmares, always behind her, always growling. She ran always until one night she turned, faced it, and the lion spoke, said her name. It had never meant to devour her. It had wanted to be heard. This is how the psyche works. That which we fear is often that which we abandoned. The angry child, the betrayed lover, the warrior denied a voice. They return in dreams, in symptoms, in projections until we welcome them home. You see, anger is relational. It arises when your boundaries are crossed, your truth ignored, your dignity trampled. It is your psyche's way of saying, this is not in alignment with who I am. And what greater act of love than to stand in alignment with yourself, to allow anger is to allow your center to speak. But beware, there are temptations even here. Once awakened, the previously repressed empath may become enamored with their own rage. They may mistake it for power, for clarity, for righteousness. But this too is a shadow, a pendulum, swing from suppression to possession. True integration walks the narrow road. It neither banishes the fire nor feeds it recklessly. It harnesses it, binds it to the will, channels it towards truth. And truth is not always gentle. I have met many who call themselves spiritual, but cannot tolerate conflict. They seek peace as a drug, not as a discipline. They spiritualize. They're bypassing, claiming forgiveness, while their wounds still bleed. They repeat mantras to silence their own cries. This is not transcendence. This is avoidance painted in golden hues. You must distinguish between suppression and transcendence. The former exiles the emotion, the latter includes it and goes beyond to transcend anger. You must first let it live. This is why so many of your relationships falter, not because you love too much, but because you cannot tell the truth of your own limits. You cannot say, this hurts me. This is not okay. I will not carry this for you. And so you carry it anyway. And you wonder why you ache, why you collapse, why you feel invisible. You made yourself invisible. But invisibility is not a virtue. It is a trauma response. So come out of hiding now. Stand up in your life with your full spectrum of feeling. Yes, even your rage, especially your rage, because that is where your sovereignty lives. That is where your spine grows. That is where your truth begins to vibrate with the pulse of something ancient and unshakable. Imagine yourself now not as the soft, silent one, but as the one who walks through the forest of Psyche barefoot, fearless, calling each forgotten part of yourself by name. And when the red-eyed wolf comes, you do not run. You kneel, you speak, you listen, and you remember you are not just love, you are also fire. You are not just mercy, you are also sword. You are not just healer, you are also protector of your sacred ground. The psyche thrives not on perfection but on integration. When you deny one part, you distort the whole. And the part you most fear, your rage, is often the very bridge to your liberation. For buried within it is the instinct for life, the refusal to be diminished, the ancient cry of the soul that says, I am That cry does not always sound sweet. It is guttural, primal, holy. Do not mistake stillness for peace, nor silence for maturity. True stillness is earned after the storm is spoken. True maturity includes the child who finally shouted, "Peace." The real peace blooms in the soil of truth. And truth requires voice. Some will not understand your awakening. They will say you have changed. They will say you are too intense, too sensitive, too much. Do not listen. They are narrating their discomfort, not your distortion. Let them go. Let them misunderstand you if they must. For to reclaim your anger is to reclaim your clarity, and with clarity comes departure from illusions, from roles, from cages you did not know you inhabited. Let me tell you something. The mystics know the soul has seasons. There is a time for softness, yes, a time for tears, but there is also a time for fire, for uprooting, for setting aflame the thorns that kept your joy trapped. To behold, you must move with the seasons. Do not cling to summer when your soul demands autumn. Let the leaves burn crimson. Let the wind strip what no longer serves. Let the cold come, and let your breath steam with the truth you have held too long. In the dreamscape, rage often appears as natural force, earthquakes, lightning strikes, volcano es longdorman. These are not signs of failure. They are the psyche's way of clearing ground for a new becoming. You are not breaking down, you are breaking open. And yes, it will feel dangerous. Your nervous system may quake, your breath may shorten, your mind may say, I am not safe. But listen, that voice is old. It belongs to the child you once were, who needed to be quiet, to survive. You are not that child anymore. You are the witness now, the one who holds, the one who breathes, the one who says, yes, I hear you, speak. And when your rage speaks, it may not use words, it may use sensation, image, memory. Let it. Do not rush to interpret. Let the symbols come. The red line, the cracked chalice, the bleeding hands, the burning garden. All of these are languages of the deep. Trust them. They know what your mind has forgotten. For it is in the symbolic that healing begins. You see, the conscious mind loves binaries, good and evil, light and dark, safe and unsafe. But the soul lives in paradox. You are not either, or you are both, and both gentle and fierce, both empathic and enraged, both healer and wounded. Integration is not the erasure of opposites, but the holding of tension between them. In that tension, a third thing is born, a new self, a fuller self, a self that no longer fears its own shadow but walks beside it. Let me invite you now to imagine you are standing on the threshold of your own unconscious. Behind you lies the life you have curated, pleasing, polished, palatable. Before you, darkness, not evil, but mystery, the cave of your own becoming, and from within it you hear a growl, not threatening, but familiar, You know this sound? It has followed you your whole life. You take a breath, you step forward, not to conquer, not to vanquish, but to remember. And there, in the cave center, you see her, your rage. She is not a monster. She is not even wild. She is weary, bound, misled. She has waited for you. And when you meet her eyes, she weeps, not out of anger, out of relief. Finally, you have come. You kneel before her, not in submission, but in reverence. You reach out not with fear, but with recognition. She is not other, she is you. You, before you learned to smile through gritted teeth, you, before you swallowed your fire to make others comfortable, you, before the world told you your voice was too much, and in that sacred silence between the two of you, something ancient shudders, breaks, heals. The chain around her neck falls, her shoulders rise, she stretches slowly, like a lion waking from a centuries-long sleep. And when she stands, you do too, together, and you walk out of the cave, not as enemy and exile, but as sovereign and soul, whole. This is the return. The mystic journey of the empath is not to become ever more yielding, ever more pleasing. It is to descend into the underworld of feeling, to confront the shadow twin of compassion, rage, and to emerge with both hands full, one open, one clenched, one that comforts, one that defends. For what is empathy if it cannot say enough? What is love if it cannot guard its own altar? What is light if it fears to cast a shadow? No more. The time of spiritual anemia is over. You are not here to be agreeable. You are here to be authentic, and that authenticity must include the blood-red truth of your anger. Not because anger is the end, but because it is the beginning of power, not power over, power within, the kind that stands barefoot on the earth and says, I am sacred, you may not pass without my consent. The kind that does not shout unless it must, but when it does, it shakes mountains. The world does not need more empaths who abandon themselves. It needs empaths who've walked through the fire of their own fury and emerged with a spine made of song and sword, who do not just weep for the wounded, but roar for the silenced, who do not just love the light, but honor the night that shaped them. You are that empath, and you are not alone. Look around you. There are others now stepping out of caves, brushing ash from their shoulders, eyes fierce with truth. You will know them not by their gentleness alone, but by their integrity, their refusal to betray themselves in the name of harmony, their willingness to speak even when their voice shakes. Especially then, let that be you. Let your sacred no be as holy as your yes. Let your boundaries be drawn not in bitterness, but in clarity. Let your roar rise, not to destroy, but to declare I am here, I am whole. I will not abandon myself again. And when the world calls you angry, say yes, yes, I am. Because anger is not the opposite of love. It is what love feels when it's been violated too long. It is what rises when truth has been buried. It is what burns away the lie. Let it burn. Beloved, let it clear the space where your soul can finally breathe. You were never meant to be soft all the time. You were meant to be whole. and wholeness is a holy flame. Welcome back, welcome home.